If you are not loving yourself more than the need to be loved by other people, then you're always going to fall for their validation. And if you're not having a life, like this person's an addition to your life, they are not instead of. So we need to stop living our life as if this magical creature is going to come and swoop you up and save you like Disney, and start to realize you got to save yourself and focus on how you want to feel with your partner. That way, when you meet someone, they might physically not be what you thought you were going to have, but all of a sudden you're like, my God, my nervous system is calm. This person's fantastic. I feel fulfilled.
I am very excited to have you on. Relationships are my favorite topic. So I actually, before I kind of stumbled into what I do now, I was gonna be a relationship therapist. Like that's what I was going to school for, and that's what I thought I was gonna be. So I love this topic. And for me, in my practice, the big thing people come to me about is they're trying to manifest love, right? So obviously there's a lot of intersections. So I'm very excited about this. And I want to start with how you kind of fell into this, because I think your story is really interesting. And Sam had just said, well, I heard about you because I think there was an event she had hosted a couple years ago where your clothing line was there. Mm-hmm. And so that was how I knew your name. And then she's like, oh yeah, she does all this relationship stuff now. I'm like, how did that happen? So tell me how you fell into it.
Oh, talk about not having this path. I'm excited that we get to have this conversation, because I think manifesting your partner has been hijacked by so many people in the negative way. And I'm actually excited for us to actually talk about what that means. And how we could be impactful with that. And that's kind of part of my story. I moved to New York when I was 19, went for acting, realized I didn't want to do that. And honestly, I wasn't very good at acting, at something besides me. Mm-hmm. And so I went into fashion and hated it. But in 2017, my mom went to the doctor with a headache, and they found 6 brain aneurysms and 2 carotid arteries in the neck. And she was given a 3% chance of survival. And that was the first time I ever really started to adopt the mindset of no, I remember The Secret and all that, but this was the first time I was like, they're going to figure this out, and we don't need to know how. They're going to figure this out, Mom. Death is not an option for you. And everyone in our surroundings started to adopt that mindset of making plans for the future and incorporating my mother no matter what. And sure enough, she's still here. They created a coil that worked, and she was a first of its kind type of situation, and she's now still kicking it and coming to visit in a few months.
Amazing.
So that was that introductory to me of wow, so my brain really can make magic happen, but depending on how you tap into it. Then I went and started my clothing company software after my mom got sick, and I just wanted to do something different. And I think I had done that company more for my sister and more what she wanted, and more of a connection point with my sister than I did it necessarily for me. So I ran that I can still own it, trying to sell it actually at this point, because you just move on from things.
Yeah.
But at the time I thought hell bent, I remember I had my vision board, and I was like, no, this is what I'm going to do. This is my calling. But I don't genuinely think I believed that, because I knew that there was a disconnect between what it was that I wanted and what it was that I was doing, and not understanding I wanted to be respected and to have my name out there, but it didn't need to be through a clothing line.
Yeah.
So ran that and did all that. Then fast forward to 2022, I was supposed to go on Shark Tank, and I was like, okay, I'm broke. I had grown the business to $1 million in 2020, and I was like, fuck yeah, let's do this. Let's put some gas in the car. Let's get a shark. And 6 months of prep, everything was going. And this is when I started doing podcasts and panels, and because of as an entrepreneur, being out there more. And long story medium, because nothing is short with me, I was on set for Shark Tank. I did my Joe Dispenza meditation of envisioning that it was going to happen, but I think there was this deep guttural feeling of it just doesn't align with me. This doesn't feel like it. And 10 hours on set, hair and makeup ready, outfit done. You're up next, Sabrina. Get ready. And I'm in the room sweating bullets, and they come in and say, I'm so sorry, we don't have time to put you on today. You're going to have to go home. And
oh my gosh.
I was,
wow.
It was dark. It was to the point where I was I had some thoughts I probably haven't really entertained. And I didn't know what to do with myself. And then they pulled the same thing 3 weeks later. We found a spot for you. This is it. And then the night before, I'm so sorry, you can't be on. So
Is that common for that to happen with people? I mean, I know a little bit. I probably know 7 or 8 people closely who have been on that show, so I've heard some of it, but
they make it very clear when you're going through the process, there's no guarantees, even though it's, and so the fact that I was a local in LA and they didn't have to pay to fly me in and do all that, they kind of look at you, they claim not, but it's I was the backup, whatever they want to say. And it literally mentally destroyed me. I didn't know what to do. And after that, this was in September. Then my friend came to visit and she's like, dude, you don't shut the fuck up about relationships. Every time you make some kind of funny thing on Insta, I had like 15,000 followers or 20 at that point. Every time you do something, she's like, people love it. I don't know, why don't you do it? And I had very limiting beliefs. I was like, who am I? No one gives a shit about me. But I had been in therapy so long and really starting to understand, like, wait a minute, I'm dating differently. All this content that I'm seeing about if he wanted to, he would. If you sleep with a guy on a first date, it's going to ruin everything. All of this judgment and shame, and I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. And I was like, cool, so let me create my own community. And I just started posting on TikTok and thinking nothing of it. And 2 weeks later, my dog got sick and he died 10 days later. The guy I was dating, I broke it off with him. I was like, you did not support me when my dog passed away. And that was the first time I realized, like, let it burn. Let it crumble. Don't try to fucking salvage any of this. Let the dog go. Let the relationship go. Let everything go. And it's time for me to start something new. And I moved to San Diego and met my partner and was just like, I'm going to try and see how this goes. And that's just the trajectory of like every day showing up and trying to build a community to where then the podcast started. And then like you gain things, you lose things. And here we are.
Snowballs.
Yeah.
Where did that interest stem from though?
I think for me, the interest really was the fact that I didn't think there was anything for me like it. And I couldn't relate to anything. You know, I'm listening to the clickbait. I'm listening to send this text and see it. And I was like, this just doesn't feel like it aligns. Yeah. And I constantly, like, it was really actually, shout out to my friend Daria and Christina, sisters. It was Christina was like 20 and I kept looking at her being like, can I just shake you? I want to help you. And she would listen and she would have better success. And we were looking and I finally just started to realize, like, I think people need the help. I need it.
They need it.
Right? And so I really wanted to understand psychology. Like I love how the brain works and neuroscience and psychology and the nervous system. And so now as I've evolved and gone along and, you know, like you have guests on, you learn, you create these new thought processes and patterns. And now it just fuels me because, you know, you get those emails of like, I finally met the person. I feel amazing. Or I finally walked away from that person and I've never felt calmer. You at least know like, fuck yeah, we're doing something that actually is impacting people.
100%. How do you think the dating landscape is like different now versus, I mean, let's say like 10 years ago? I mean, what do you see coming up a lot?
I see it coming up a lot. Okay, I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah, please.
I think every generation I've spoken to, whether it be my parents, my grandparents, there was a complaint along the way. Yeah. You know, it was, there's not enough people in my town. I couldn't meet anybody. I had to marry the farmer's daughter next door because what are you going to do? I was forced to get married at 20. I had to have kids. Then all of a sudden our generation comes and it's like the internet. Oh my God, you can online date. And it's like, I'm biased. I met my partner on Hinge. So like as much as I shit on it for the 12 plus years that I was on it, it really was, I think what I'm really seeing is like, yes, 10 years ago were apps as prevalent? No. But we're also going into like, we've post-COVID, we are not connecting with people in the same ways. We spend fucking like 6 to 12 months, depending on where you lived, inside, away from humans. And I see a lot in the dating landscape right now is this really big fear of rejection and abandonment and those fears that are driving the car. And I think it's just a lot of people that haven't really understood like your inner child is the one that's reacting and you need to be the goddamn adult that responds. And so it's just a lot of these loops that people get themselves on. I was her, so I was with it. And we want to blame the apps and blame everything else when it's like, you can also become a better buyer and you can also have boundaries and understand what you want and get to know yourself and stop complaining to everybody that men ain't shit or I can't meet anyone and start to understand that your body cannot differentiate those cues from actual danger. So you are constantly dysregulating yourself and putting yourself in a cognitive bias when you go around and say how everything is so terrible without looking and going, am I the common denominator?
Mm-hmm. I mean, people don't want to admit that they're the common denominator at all. But I mean, can we talk about the fear of rejection though? Because tale as old as time, but at the same time, I feel like it's worse now than it used to be. And why do you think that is?
I think technology is really impacting it. I think the fact that we've gamified our brains with these cell phones. Like we are still hunter-gatherers in our physiology, but yet now all of a sudden we have unlimited access to everything. So fear and anxiety have been heightened because every time you open up TikTok or Instagram, there's some bullshit, right? Yeah. There's something that's scaring you. And I think we are also in a time where, you know, because anxiety is so prevalent and because now the pendulum is swinging, right? So we have all these negatives, but then we have these positives of learning about ourselves. Wow, 10, 12, 15 years ago, I didn't know about any of this. I didn't know where to find it. I had shitty therapists that were just trying to medicate me and telling me I was fine and there's nothing going on. So with the negatives come the positive. And I think that fear, I mean, when we look at fear of rejection at its core, usually we see that in a lot of avoidant attachment styles. But anxious, it doesn't really fucking matter. If you're insecure and you are scared of being judged for who you are, you're a human and welcome. But I think the fear that people have is ultimately what's stopping them from getting into these relationships. Because when you're so terrified of being abandoned or rejected, you're not actually even able to connect with somebody. And so you end up just doing that to yourself and just self-abandoning.
Mm-hmm. I feel like, well, I'll say most of the people I work with definitely lean avoidant. So let's talk about this a little bit. To be honest, I've never been super into the whole attachment style thing, just for my own personal reasons. I feel like the more you attach to it, you can feed into that a little bit, So I like pulled away from it, but it's definitely helpful and to understand. And I was just talking to some of my friends about it yesterday. We're like, wow, everyone over here is super avoidant. How are we going to get out of this? And it's definitely the entrepreneur, like high achiever type, very avoidant. And you see all these things on social media that are just like, don't date an avoidant. And I'm like, what's the middle ground here? And I think my questions are really, if someone identifies like, I am avoidant, how the fuck do I heal that?
Totally.
And if somebody finds themselves in a relationship with an avoidant, is that like walk away? Is that, how can you support them? Like,
what do you do?
What do you do?
So for anybody, we'll even very quickly go over the attachment styles so that they understand. I'm with you. I think we have way too many people that are using attachment theory to self-identify or to diagnose everyone else and to justify. And it's like the theory of gravity, right? It's going to explain certain things, but you can't just use that to now then be like, oh, you're heavy. Well, gravity, right? Yeah. You didn't lose the weight. It's like, let's be realistic.
Yeah.
So there's three main insecure attachment styles. Of course, there's these amalgamations and all these things that have come over the years. There's the secure attachment style, which is I can give and I can receive, essentially, is I feel safe expressing myself. This person was in a home that their feelings were validated. They had caregivers that made very consistent eye contact. They felt like they had object permanence. They could trust their caregiver. Those are the people that are able to express their emotions. They are emotionally available and they understand that they are human and they are allowed to feel these emotions, which is how they're able to be interconnected and independent, right? So that's the goal of a healthy and secure relationship is interdependence and independence, co-creating to create a life together. Then we go into the insecure attachments. And there's the anxious, which is the most kind of common one that we see often. And that is typically deeply rooted in a fear of abandonment. So they had a caregiver that was inconsistent, that may not have been, and it can range. I think a lot of people, when we talk about attachment styles, get really upset of, no, my parents were amazing. And what we have to look at is you can have two fucking rock star parents, but we can hold two conflicting thoughts. I can love my mother and also know she failed me as a mother in that way. Mm-hmm. And so for the anxious person, it's like, oftentimes we see that with one of the parents and the caregivers being very inconsistent and causing a lot of anxiety. The child learns I have to be outwards, I have to express, I have to scream, yell in order to get anyone's attention. It's a constant need for reassurance, constant just always feeling negative and about self. Very much of what did I do wrong? Mm-hmm. Then we owe the avoidant. And the avoidant has gotten such a negative rap that even the guy that wrote, Amir Levine, who wrote Attached, that really started all this, came out and said recently, I was way too harsh on the avoidant. I did not understand them as much. I did not give them compassion. And I think I misrepresented a lot of their characteristics. Because on the outside, they look very, well, you don't even care. You don't even give a shit. You just shut down. You don't even listen to me. You just walk out. Now, of course, like anything, these attachment styles are on a spectrum, right? Yeah. So you could be so avoidant to where literally you cannot speak. Okay, well, then that person's going to have a lot more on their journey versus somebody who might just have a slight bit of, that's how they deal with things. And with avoidance, really what we see is those were, again, could be great caregivers, but those are really children that their emotions were stifled. Their emotions, they learned emotions aren't safe, emotions are scary. They may have been hit or their parent was dismissive of them. They came in a household where emotions were not something that was prevalent. So to them, that's why they need that space. It is terrifying. Don't come next to me. Now, the anxious avoidant trap happens all the time because the anxious person's like, oh, you're so stoic. I love that you're so calm and this demeanor. And then the avoidant is looking, wow, you're the anxious person. You're so expressive. Look how you understand yourself. Yeah. Neither one of them really do. That's the facade. They're both emotionally unavailable. both of them don't tap in. It's one, the anxious is outward, and the avoidant is get away from me, I'm triggered. When they trigger, that's when we see the attachment style. And I think that's the common misconception of these people with the avoidance. It's like, no, you're just dating an asshole.
Yeah.
You're just dating a dude that's ignoring you. That's not. When someone's avoidant, it's when they're triggered. And a trigger is a cue to your nervous system that you're not safe. So maybe that's that they're perceiving you're going to leave them. So they shut down. They cannot express themselves. That doesn't mean that because you ask somebody where they want to go to dinner, they just never text you back. It's like those are two different things.
Yeah.
Lastly, we have the disorganized attachment, and that's that amalgamation kind of both. I want the love, I'm terrified of. A lot we see in prevalent in homes of abuse and, not really having the caregivers that are present. Think about a caregiver that is abusive. I want you to love me because you're my parent, and then you get hit or reprimanded, so you're scared. It's its own kind of hell. And it's I want it, and it's that's that real back and forth. That 1 minute they're super all over you, and then the next it's like get away from me. They feel suffocated with love and without. Yeah. So knowing all of this, oh man, that's why when I hear about the avoidance, like my partner is more avoidant, I'm more anxious leaning. Had we met 10 years ago, never would have happened. But he lost his sister and I lost my dog. I had been in years of therapy, so had he. And when we met, what we want to look at here is not villainizing somebody because they shut down, not villainizing somebody because they don't want to text you for a day, but are you able to actually communicate with this person, right? Mm-hmm. If you have someone that shuts down, are they going to therapy? Are they trying to help themselves? Or here's a great explanation or an excuse. Are they using it as an excuse? Well, I'm avoidant. Yeah. I was a guy I dated who used to say that. Or as an explanation, hey, the reason I shut down is because when you said that, it made me feel really inferior to you. And I didn't know how to handle it, so I completely shut down. Mm-hmm. Then you can say, okay, thank you for sharing. Like with my partner, we've learned over the 2 years almost that we've been together that I was very clear with him from the beginning. Like, we got to work on this avoidance and we have to work on you shutting down. And so now he'll preface, this is really hard for me and very uncomfortable, but I know that I need to share this with you. Yeah. I hear that. I know. Disarm, shut your mouth, and listen, because he is coming with something vulnerable and he is scared because his fear is that I'm going to reject him for who he is and I'm going to leave him. Yeah. So I wish people understood a little bit deeper that these attachment styles don't mean that these people are bad. But what we want to look at is, when do you see them? One couple of things. With the avoidant, when do you notice it? Do you notice it all the time, that they're just not making plans, not committing to you? They never want to have conversations. That's just emotionally unavailable. Yeah. Okay? That person's just not interested. Yeah. Or is it that when they get emotional, they shut down? Or when something gets heightened or they get triggered, you can see it. The second thing to look at is, does this happen in every aspect of their life? Because the reality is, if someone is avoidant, it's not just going to be with you, but everybody else. They're able to hold conversations. So we have to look and see. Like with my partner, I see it in all areas of life that he can shut down and he gets overwhelmed. I can even see his eyes watering. Yeah. But he doesn't know how to express it. And that's totally okay. And we work on that and we're able to support each other. So I think it's not a death wish, but it needs to be understood that both partners need to be doing the work, because the anxious person doesn't just get a free ride to say, because what happens we see is the anxious person is very outward. You never do this. You never. So they're disconnected from themselves as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think what's interesting that I'm seeing is it's like people have to realize that this is a skill. And I have people who come to me and they're very aware of, I want to learn these things. I want to work on these things. And other people are, and it tends to be the avoidant. Well, we should just slide into each other's lives and it should be easy and perfect. Like it shouldn't be hard. It shouldn't be work. And I'm like, well, there are different types of hard and work, right? Yeah. And I think that there are, and I don't know where those expectations come from of people just feeling like, if there's one little trigger, like that can't be it. Like relationships shouldn't be hard. I think there's like a balance there. And I mean, I guess, how do you know what that healthy balance is, right? Because it shouldn't feel like a struggle the whole way through, but things are going to come up and you have to be able to have hard conversations.
100%. I think the difference is what is happening with the dysregulation. Yeah. I saw somebody the other day, they commented on one of my videos saying, well, when you're with someone secure, your anxiety won't get triggered. And I was like, fucking bullshit. Who told you that? Yeah. Like, that's not it. Yeah. I'm triggered by walking outside and smelling something that reminds me of my childhood. So like, don't come at me saying that your secure partner is never going to trigger you. What we want to look at is, are they triggering your core beliefs, your negativity? Is it that you're constantly feeling like you're not good enough and you can never get their attention and you're anxious because at night you're not sleeping and that you don't know when you're going to see them again because they're not giving you clarity? Or are you anxious because, I have to level up and communicate. I have to be more vulnerable. I am really uncomfortable by this. This person's trying to get to know me better. We have to be able to understand the difference between those, because when I met my partner, he's not my type. Very handsome guy, but he's not the kind of guy, he's not the same cookie cutter I always went for. And I wasn't that into him. He was more into me than I was into him. And we hooked up on the first date, and I left being like, if I never see him again, that's fine. I had a good time. And he just wanted to keep seeing me. And I felt very unsafe for a while with him, very triggered. And then I realized, because this was the first time that someone had really seen me, heard me, and understood me. This was the first time that somebody was like, hey, I see who you are, and it doesn't scare me. I don't think you're anxious. I don't think you have anything wrong with you. I'm anxious. We know that. But it was the first time. So my discomfort came from, okay, Sabrina, you need to have a hard conversation with him. Okay, Sabrina, you need to push through your your core beliefs that you're not good enough because this person is telling you that you are. You now have to believe that, versus this person doesn't want to have a conversation about commitment, but they always avoid this and they're not calling me. It's like, those are two very different dysregulated experiences.
Yeah.
So our relationships work? Fuck yeah. But they're work to help you grow into the best versions of yourself, but not work to just keep the relationship even together.
Yeah, 100%. Can we talk about the type thing? I think that's very interesting, because I think that's a huge block for people. And we were at the beginning, like manifesting, right? And I'm like, I could break it down. But people are so set on their type, and they're so set on this very specific vision of what they want. And I think it's good to be clear in what you're looking for. But I think what people are clear on is often like the wrong things they should be clear on.
It's like, it's like starting a business and being like, okay, what are you manifesting? And you're like, that everyone's going to love me, and that I'm going to be rich and all this. And you're like, okay, well, but then you're missing the point of this.
Yeah, that's not it. Yeah.
So I think when it comes to that, because I'm big on that, I think that's why we were saying earlier that manifestation got hijacked.
Yeah,
because
totally.
I think a lot of people think of like 6'5", finance,
Yeah,
blue
that's
eyes,
it.
right? I want the tall, I want the good looking. And it's like, yeah, okay, here's the reality. You and every other girl. You and every other woman. And I'm sorry, unless you're fucking a unless you're somebody that's like, then the average girl like us is not going to get the Ryan Reynolds of the world, because there's not a lot of them. So then we see people getting pigeonholed on like, I have to have 6'5", and you're like, oh girl, that's less than 1% of the world. Yeah. Though I got lucky and I got 6'4". But nonetheless, like, I think what we want to look at here is get rid of the checklist of what physicality this person needs to have. That doesn't really matter at the end of the day, because I have been attracted to men where I'm like, you are not my type, but like, you got a fucking swag.
Yeah.
Or you are so
That's
smart.
It, though.
You
it's
know?
the swag, 100%.
Confidence.
Like, it's energy. It is confidence. It's energy. It's like that intangible thing.
Sexy.
Like, that's it. Yeah.
Then what we want to look at is, how do I want to feel with my partner?
Yeah.
That's what we want to manifest. I want to feel seen, heard, and understood. Okay, what does that look like for me? That when I express myself, my partner listens, and that they see me. So if I'm emotional, they'll come and hold my hand. Okay, I want to be heard. That my partner puts their phone down to talk to me. That made me feel really good. When we're manifesting, we want to know, how is this going to feel in your body? Wow, I feel so calm. I feel so relaxed. Like, I did a video the other day that went viral, and it was 80% positive, 80% of people understanding it. And there was the other percent of like, this is delusional. This is dumb. And all I said was, what if I told you that in 6 to 8 months, you were going to meet your partner? You didn't have to worry about a thing. How would you show up? How would your energy change? And a lot of people are like, I'd be a lot less anxious. I wouldn't care. And it's like, great. Bring that energy into your dating experiences. Mm-hmm. I want you to feel so confident and secure that the universe, God, whatever, whoever you believe in that is bigger than you, I hope, unless you think you are, well, then I don't know why you're on the show. But whoever and whatever you think is bigger than you has your fucking back, knows exactly what you need versus what you want. And that if you just make space for it and stop accepting the people that very clearly don't, that you will receive that.
Yeah.
And living in that space of, like my friend Jason always says, good with, good without. If you are not, I'm another one, my mama, if you are not loving yourself more than the need to be loved by other people, then you're always going to fall for their validation. And if you're not having a life, like this person's an addition to your life, they are not instead of. So we need to stop living our life as if this magical creature is going to come and swoop you up and save you like Disney, and start to realize you got to save yourself and focus on how you want to feel with your partner. That way, when you meet someone, they might physically not be what you thought you were going to have, but all of a sudden you're like, my nervous system is calm. This person's fantastic. I feel fulfilled.
Yeah. Can we talk about the nervous system being calm? Because, I mean, I love how much you bring it back to the body. I love that in your work because it's so important. And I have this conversation with a lot of people. Like, they're looking for the spark. And I'm like, is it the spark? Or, like, are you stressed? Is it you like the drama? Like, you know, passion. What's passion?
Yeah.
It's all of that. And so can we talk about what like a healthy relationship should feel like and what's going on with some of that spark stuff?
Totally. So my friend Britt Frank is a brilliant neuropsychotherapist, and she said it perfectly. The spark is actually scientifically, this was studied at Harvard, if anybody wants to Google the spark Harvard study, Is your blood rushing to your limbs so that you could run? Because your body is sensing danger. The problem is they're a really attractive 6'3" man that you want to climb.
Yeah.
So we see, because imagine that feeling that you had of all of this energy in your body. If that wasn't somebody you wanted to go on a date with, you wouldn't sit at that table with them. You'd be like, I'm sorry, I don't feel comfortable right now. I don't feel safe. So when we're talking about the nervous system is, for a long time, it is automatic in the sense where it will always keep you safe. But for a long time, people in science thought that we had no control over it. That, hey, if you get dysregulated, there's nothing you could do. And essentially what's happening is like our bodies are taking, there's glimmers and triggers. Triggers are going to be a cue to your nervous system. You're not safe. That person didn't text you. That person didn't confirm plans. And all of a sudden your body is going, she's not safe. Oh my God, he's going to leave her. But wait, but what if he doesn't call her? Oh my God, if he doesn't call her, he doesn't like her. She's going to be alone forever. And then versus a glimmer is like, oh, wow, that made me really happy today. The sunshine is a glimmer. My dog is a glimmer. It makes your nervous system feel, oh, I'm safe. This feels so good. The reason that we always bring it back is because I think a lot of people misunderstand when it comes to dating is like, you don't want to feel the spark with somebody because here's the reality. That feeling will fade and then you are left with that person. And so a lot of people are chasing a feeling. I want to feel all of this. When what you want is a nervous system that feels regulated. What we're aiming for here, because when you feel that dysregulation, those high highs, low lows, and the like, when is he going to call me? When's he going to text me? That's a dopamine release in your brain. Dopamine gets released in reward. It's a reward drug. So let's get brainy. Your prefrontal cortex stopped growing when you're 28. So if you're pre-28, don't worry, babes. You still have some time. And the prefrontal cortex is responsible for decision-making, common sense. And it's called the general. It's where we make all the good decisions from. When you get dysregulated, boop, that goes offline. Shuts down. It's because your brain's like cannot logically understand what's happening. So it goes into survival mode. Survival mode's the limbic system of your brain. You stop growing that when you're 6, the amygdala. So your brain understands, oh my God, when she was 7 or 5, her father used to leave her all the time. Shut down. This is the same feeling. So that's why we have to get so granular about what we're feeling in our body, because the sensations are giving us cues as to what the fuck is going on with us. So if you're on a date and you're sweating, your heart palpitations, and you want the spark versus then you go, because usually what I hear is the spark comes from the people that don't want what you want. And then when he's too boring. No, boring is a regulated nervous system because that's your body saying, hey, I feel safe. I'm not questioning that this person's going to leave me. They're very consistent. That feels good. But what we see as too easy. I don't want that.
I mean, that's it though. How do people get out of that? Because I think that's the most common thing that I see around me.
I mean, for me, how I got out of that was retraining my nervous system. It's about understanding that we want a flexible nervous system. We don't want you to always be regulated because it's not life. You're not always calm. Are you fucking kidding? So what we want to look at is if you're somebody that's constantly chasing that, it's like, one, we need a detox. Detox is the first thing. Your dopamine receptors are going on because you're below your baseline. That's why it's constantly feeding for more. We need to baseline you back out. So maybe that just means taking a month off, right? It takes 3 weeks to really detox your brain. So then maybe we just say a month, nothing. No dating, nothing. Fine. Learn to be with yourself. It's really fucking hard. Then in that time, we can start to get very clear about, well, how do I feel in my body? I didn't understand that I was anxious around my dad until the last time I saw him. When I felt, because I had been so safe and calm, when he came, all of a sudden I was like, whoa, that's what that feels like. I was living in that dysregulation all my life. That felt normal. Yeah. And so it's really important about understanding, like, okay, when I do breath work, wow, I feel really calm. So this is what a calm nervous system feels like. And just being cognizant that if you want to make changes, it's going to be very slow because your nervous system has been doing this for however old you are right now. So give it a minute.
Well, what tools do you think are most helpful in working on the nervous system regulation, like flexibility?
So the first thing is I'm big on the polyvagal theory. Is we want to understand the first thing is what are the sensations in my body is the first time. Like even right now, if I were feeling anxious, I'd be like, ooh, I feel it right here. Okay, I feel it right here. Okay, what's happening in my body? And so I'll close and sit with the feeling. It feels like a brick in my chest. Okay, sit with the brick. 3 minutes. Takes 90 seconds for an emotion to run its course. Then after, I might stop and say, okay, I'm feeling a little bit calmer. I need to go regulate. So I'll pick a regulation technique. Where am I on the ladder? Am I dorsal? Am I shut down? I don't even have energy to move? Great. So maybe that just means sitting up straight. Or am I sympathetic, where I have so much energy I feel like I'm coming out of my skin? I'll go for a walk around the block. Once I've done that, then I might come back and say, great, let me start to challenge my thoughts now that I'm in a regulated state. And maybe I'm not. Maybe I come back from my walk and say, I'm still feeling that. Let me do a few jumping jacks. right? Just to do something to support yourself. Once we understand that, and look how many layers come before you can start to understand your thoughts. Journaling is scientifically shown to be good for you. So write it on paper, don't write it on your phone. A different part of your brain activates when you have pen in your hand. So let's start to get used to journaling it out, challenging your thoughts. Okay, I can't get over this breakup. I'm a fucking mess. Great. Go on your walk, come back home. What am I holding on to? Well, they're so amazing. Give me 5 reasons they're amazing. List them out and give me examples. Because usually what I'll hear is, well, okay, make them a real person.
Yeah.
Challenge that, right? So we need to start challenging our thoughts, because usually what happens is, what did I do wrong? Okay, so it's not about them, it's about you.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
100%.
When we're coming with our nervous system, it's not about always being regulated. It's about having tools that when you feel dysregulated, you're like, okay, maybe breath work. Doing a few breaths, it's the valve to the nervous system. The physiological sigh. 2 inhales. Exhale, sharp. Do 3 of those.
Yeah. Well, and they're all such simple tools, right? And it's just about that awareness of how we're actually feeling. And I think that people think their thoughts, they don't feel their feelings. And we've got to be able to actually drop into the body and notice what's going on. But I did want to talk about the breakup piece, because I know this is really hard for people. Letting go of someone. I mean, what is going on with that? People get, I think I err maybe a little more on the side of a little too unattached. I'm very not attached.
Yeah.
I like to think it's healthy, but if it errs in a direction, it's probably
skewing.
It's skewing over there. So it's something I just I don't understand as well, genuinely, personally. But I also see all these behaviors people fall into, and I'm like, well, you're still watching this person, social media, you're still showing up places that they'll be all of those things. So if somebody is stuck in a breakup, what advice do you have?
It's a great question. My friend Britt Frank and I created a breakup course because we were like, okay, we got to kick this. So the first thing is that we need to start having an understanding that this is going to hurt. And we need to, I am tired of how many times I get I don't want to feel, or this is hard. It's like, bitch, choose your hard. What do you mean this is hard? Waking up every day and putting clothes on for me sometimes can be hard, but I choose what's hard for me. So knowing off the bat, you're about to withdraw. No contact for minimum 3 weeks. No contact, not one looking at their Insta. Every time, think of them as heroin. Every time you do anything, look at a text, look at their social, you are shooting back up. So then you're starting this clock all over again. So we need to know it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be painful. You're going to have withdrawals. You're going to cry. You're going to purge. And then after we go through that, my next step is you got to make them a real person. You've got to take that. My friend said that to me when I broke up with my ex. I couldn't. And she said one thing, take the shine off of him. That was how I got over him, because I started to challenge. Everything was my fault. Well, Sabrina, couldn't all have been your fault, right? What was his responsibility in this? Right. He would yell at me and he would scream and he would walk out. That's why I'd react that way. Okay, so that's on me, how I reacted, but that person didn't treat me in the way that I deserved. That's what we need to start, because oftentimes the reason people get fucking stuck on it and is because they're on a loop of their own shit. Why couldn't I have gotten them? What was I not good enough? Was I not worthy? I don't deserve this. That's what they're hung up on. They're avoiding feeling the pain of actually having to acknowledge those things. So it's easier to go, I just need them back, because if I get them back, I'm safe. Mm-hmm. And that's why people harp and hold on to. It's an addiction, just like anything else. And oftentimes it's because they want to avoid the feeling of having to say, it's over, and let it go, because this person's not for you. Then we have scarcity mindset of, but I'll never find anyone, and da-da-da. Great. Give me facts to back that up.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the biggest one. People really seem to believe that there's not anyone else out there for them. And I'm like, I mean,
that was me.
It's crazy though, because, and I understand how we think that, but we are in an age where we have access to more people than ever before.
I'll be honest. You want to know where also that comes from too? As it's when you get dysregulated, you're like, that's a child. Because as a child, I only had one set of caregivers. If my father left, I literally could die. That was not a joke. You see that woman, the mother that left her kid home for 5 days to go to Vegas and the kid died. Yeah. She left it home alone. So if your parent, your caregiver, literally abandons you, your survival. The problem is you're not a child sitting in a room waiting to be chosen. Mm-hmm. So when we regulate, and that's that limbic system, you're living in that little child that's like, this is it. No one's ever going to come back for you because no one likes you. No one wants you. So we believe that. But when we actually regulate and say, well, I don't have any facts to back that up. I've met 20 people in the last month, actually, and I met a couple of nice people. When we start to challenge it, you're like, oh, yeah. And then you just start to believe it after a while. It takes 300 repetitions for your body to remember of movement. It takes 3,000 for your brain to remember and have a new neural pathway. So you're at 2,999. Keep going.
Yeah. What about dynamics where people break up and they get back together? Can we talk about that?
That's the addiction loop happening all over again. That's that push-pull dynamic.
But I've also seen that work when people, like some of my closest friends broke up. They were apart for 3 years, both went on their deep self-healing journeys, and then come back together and they're like completely different people. Like, sometimes it can work. Totally.
That's a very different story.
Yeah.
If you break up, go seek help, and then reconnect and realize we've both grown, this is more compatible, fuck yeah. Run off into the sunset and go have fun because you did the work. When I have an issue is break up, get back together. Break up, get back together. Like one creator I saw, and she was like, she was boasting of the fact that like her ex has come back to her 6 times already. And I was like, girl, that looks real sad on your part. You don't have any boundaries then. Because homeboy is going out, seeing what else is out there, coming back to you. Going out, coming back. Because if you're not actually, like when my mama always said, you're not getting back together, you're starting anew. So what the fuck has changed?
That's the thing. And most of the time it's not any different.
Did you go to therapy? Like that couple? Yes, I went to therapy. Here's my involvement. Here's why I went wrong. Here's why I took you for granted. Great, let's talk. But if you don't come with accountability and any kind of ownership of just, well, you know, you were really hard and you were really annoying in our relationship, or like you were just wanting me to text you too much. It's like, then neither one of you have done anything growth. You're just going to get back into the same thing. And people love that high, high, low, low addiction cycle.
Yeah, 100%. Can we talk about green flags?
Yeah. My favorite green flag, a couple. One, consistency. And consistency does not mean that they text you every single day at the same time. Consistency by definition in a relationship means reliable and words and actions aligning. So I'll call you at 7. They call you at fucking 7, or at least you get communication. I'm running late. So sorry I couldn't make it, whatever. I'll see you Friday. They show up Friday. You have somebody that their words and their actions align. When they say they're going to do something, you're not second guessing. Now, you can still have anxiety because dating is a very anxious, anxiety-inducing time, right? But that the pendulum can't swing so severely where like when you're with them, you're on cloud 9, and when you're not, you're like suffocating. That's too much of a variance. And realistically, you're not being realistic about them. My second thing, outside of neurodivergence, eye contact. Eye contact is huge. If somebody is looking me in the eyes versus, you know, how many times you've been on a date and you're all of a sudden you see the person's just,
Yeah.
You're just looking around, looking at the waiter, looking at their phone. It's like, okay, are they asking you questions? Again, outside of neurodivergence, which I understand, that's its own sector. But the average, you know, when you're fucking going on a date, the normal schmo that you're meeting, are they asking you questions? Those are even just like some basic green flags. Do they remember things that you tell them?
Yeah.
Right? Like if I told you that I love pink, did you remember that? Or are you saying, what's your favorite color? And you're like, oh, you didn't actually listen to me, huh?
These are green flags, but I also feel like, isn't this just like bare minimum, like listening to people? Like that's,
and I wish. And
that's how I feel about it. You know, I mean, I think the biggest one I have seen, like for me personally with dating, it's like people don't ask questions, but you also, it's the same, it could be the same thing with friends. I'm like, you're not asking questions about me the way I'm asking questions about you. Like there's, what's going on here? And I think it's just so wild how we don't have that communication skill.
No one who taught us that.
I know.
That perfect example is what I mean by where did you learn this from? You can I love my mom, literally, but she failed us in a lot of ways because she didn't have the help she needed. That's like the tip of the iceberg, me just even saying that. She has her reasons. So when we look at that as, I never was taught how to communicate effectively. No one taught me how to have that conversation. So how am I going to know how to do that until I do the work? And I've learned, boundaries are important. That's another green flag. They respect your boundaries. If I say, because I don't drink alcohol, it's just not my thing. If I say, I don't go out past 9, sorry, I'd rather get a matcha. Are you free this? You don't push back. Well, come on, just come get a drink with me.
Yeah, definitely not.
Right. You respect my boundaries. If I say, take your shoes off, take your goddamn shoes off when you walk into my house. Right. Are they reciprocal? What I'm giving, I'm getting, right? It's not me fucking serving the ball 3,000 times until I hit you in the head for you to serve it back. It's I go, you go. We're back where it feels like you're both actually investing. And this person is, how do they speak about their past relationships? Do they take accountability and ownership? Do they blame their ex and say they're all crazy? Do they harp on their ex for 30 fucking minutes while you're sitting there and they're crying over their coffee, but then asking you to go out again? Right? Like these are all the things. Do they take accountability and ownership? Do they say, I'm sorry? It sounds like, come on. You'd be surprised how many people don't do it.
Yeah. It's interesting for me because I feel like I'll go on dates and people will feel good because I'm regulated and calm and I'm asking them questions, and they're like, and it's funny because they're like, yeah, of course you're into me because you just talked about yourself the whole time and I'm nice to you. And I'm like, yeah, of course you want to go on another date, but like, and I think people don't think about, it's like, do I like you? Do they like me? And there's that whole dynamic too. People don't think about, do I actually like this person? Like, people like that other people like them.
Well, we want to be chosen.
Yeah.
That's why I'm always like, I don't give a shit how you I don't give a shit how they feel about you.
Yeah.
I don't care what you think about them. I care how you feel with them.
Yeah.
I care about, do you choose that person? How many times I've had clients and it's like they're harping on these people and then they will admit, I don't even know that I want this person. It's like, because you're so hell bent on so it's actually a Freudian term, repetition compulsion. And what that essentially in a layman's very quick terms is, you're going to repeat all the patterns that you had in childhood because your brain thinks, if I can date the narcissist now and get him to change, that would have changed all the things I went through with my father.
Totally.
So that's where we see patterns and that. So when you're so focused on, are they choosing me? What you're telling me is you don't choose yourself and you've completely self-abandoned. You will do whatever it takes for them to choose you, inclusive of not having boundaries, people pleasing, saying yes when you mean to say no, and not taking up space with your voice.
Yeah. At the core of this is, do you love yourself? Do you love your life? Do you know yourself? Do you know what you want? And I think you learn a lot about that through relationships,
100%.
Of course. But I think there's also that piece of, getting to know yourself and, like you said, spending time alone. How does somebody know they're in a good space to really get into dating?
Do you accept yourself? Do you accept the parts of you? And I'm big on IFS, internal family systems, parts work. I don't know if you saw Inside Out. Inside Out too. Yeah. So that's all the part shit, just in case. And essentially there, it's like a part of me, like for me, I always felt like I was too much. I wasn't good enough, but I was too much. It's that fun dichotomy when you have a narcissistic parent. And I had to look and say, whoa, I couldn't look at that 6-year-old part of me because I hated her. I didn't believe in her. I thought she's the reason that I'm like this, until I went back and said, I accept you. I love you. And I think you're fucking amazing and you're a human. Having compassion for myself meant that as I date, I don't need to take it personally. Like we have to look, if you're somebody that takes everything personal, right? How many times I've seen that, like, he didn't call me because he doesn't like me. And it's like, and then you find out later, you're like, dude, their fucking father died. Like, this wasn't about you. Stop making it about you. That's where we see that anxiety more often than not, because as a kid, you always perceive it has to have been my fault because we don't have the cognitive ability to say, my caregiver failed me. So I think that's really where a lot of this comes down of like, do you accept yourself? Do you have your boundaries? Do you know your non-negotiables? Do you know what you want and what you don't? Do you know how you want to feel with somebody? Are you clear about the goals? Are you communicative? Are you scared of communication? Jesus, I did a video yesterday, went viral on TikTok. Instead of ghosting, say this. It scared me how many people were like, I'd rather get ghosted than this. And it's like, then have direct communication? Yeah, because at least then I can like make it up in my head. And it's like, and these are the people out there dating. These are the people that you're fucking swiping on.
That's the problem.
That's what I mean of like... That's where you're like, hey, here's the reality. When we learn that most people are projecting onto us, it makes life a lot easier. Something happened earlier. I was supposed to be on a show and they came, they sent me all the dates and then we wrote back, yep, that's great. And all of a sudden I get an email, sorry, they booked up. We'll talk to you next year. Okay, first time that happened, then it happened again. And I looked at my partner and I was like, Ryan, what the fuck? And he was like, before you take this about yourself, let me share this. And it was another podcaster saying, I don't take these anymore because people are flaky. And I stopped and I was like, I almost took that personally. I almost made that about me. And then you're like, that's when you challenge. What could I have done?
Yeah.
What could you have possibly done to make that happen? Then leave it.
I know. Well, and it's all very self-centered. I'm curious about the dating app piece too, because I mean, I have had great success on dating apps. Like all my previous long-term partners I met on dating apps. And I think most people just don't know how to use it. And for me, I'm very specific with what I want, what I'm looking for. I feel like I'm good at making a profile. Obviously it's worked every single time and it works really fast and I find really high quality people on there. And I look at other profiles and I'm like, this is so fucking vanilla. You could be for anyone. You're not specific enough. Like you could be for anybody. Anybody could like this. It's like or it doesn't tell me anything about who you are, or you have to think about it. I think about it like business, right? When somebody comes to my profile, they don't know who the fuck I am. No. In 5 seconds, they're getting a gauge on what's my vibe. And people on their profiles, I look at my girlfriends and I'm like, this doesn't look like you at all. No. Like I'm like, you're super spiritual and hippie, and it's you with a wine glass in your hand. This makes no fucking sense. Yep. So I'm curious what your tips are to effectively use apps.
Totally. You got to be a better buyer. Mm-hmm. We have to, like you said, we have to have parameters around. Like I personally, for me, I did not have notifications on the app so that I wasn't distracted. I would go on when I had the time and the bandwidth and the energy to do so. And then I would very quickly give my phone number, or you can give a Google number. Like you don't have to give your actual phone number so that we could get off the app. Like to me, it's important. Stop with the digital fucking relationships. Stop with the texting and creating a false sense of intimacy and spending 6 days texting nonstop and doing all this just to never meet this person because you're not getting that time back. When it comes to dating apps, what we want to look at is a couple of things. Because Ryan and I do dating app profile audits, so I get them every day.
That's fun.
It's so fun.
I really want to know what you see.
It's so
there.
fun.
Yeah.
We see pretty much the same thing over and over. And I'll give you an example. One of my clients, I love her. And she's fantastic. And every time we talk, it's how intentional she is. And she wants this relationship. But then these guys that she gets, and I'm like, girl, where are you finding them from? One was a narcissistic Mormon. The other one was like verbally abusive. She would send me screenshots. And I'm like, okay, what's happening here? Then I said, can I see your profile? She sends it to me. 0 on it. It's like basic, like things like all about what you need to have. You need to be compassionate and listen to me and all that. Okay, first of all, do you think someone reading that's like, oh, I'm self-aware? Yes. It's like,
yeah,
you need to make me laugh. Oh, yeah. So it was that. Then you go and it's like all her photos were highly sexualized. And it's not negative, but I was like, if you want an intentional relationship, but your photo is your sports bra where your nipples are coming through and you're making like a little winky, it's like, you look like you want to have sex, you're getting a disconnect here. We made some changes, complete world change. She finally added a better bio, changed her photos to make them look like her. No fucking filters, no weird angles. There's actually a study that if you have a ton of angles, that shows insecurity. So you want your head and your crown and your chin need to be in alignment by 10%.
Wow.
So when we see a profile, if you see tons of, weird angles and selfies, that person's probably has some insecurities that they're dealing with.
That's interesting.
Right? We want to look at, is there conversation fodder? Why are you talking to this person? Because of their looks? Then just own it. Or is it, their profile was really good. It had a lot, because I was the same. I did really well on the apps because I was very intentional. I didn't waste my fucking time. I knew what it was that I was looking for. I stopped doing charity work. I wasn't trying to force it to happen.
Charity work.
Just going for it just because they're nice. Just because they ask you out. It's like, but if you don't feel it, then stop wasting their time and yours. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just when it comes to the apps, be a better buyer. Or is the house always going to win? Sure, you're gambling. But that doesn't mean that you can't still show up differently to have different experiences on the apps. They're just a conduit to meeting new people.
Yeah.
The other option, you want to go outside and talk to people? Good luck.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all that. And I think combining in what you talked about before, like not everybody knows the feeling they're looking for, because I also think there's a lot of people where I'm like, this guy looks great, you should go on a date. No, look at him, and first of all, I feel like guys don't have good pictures in general. Like that was a way better person, but I also think there's that openness of just be open too.
That's the funny thing. They did a study where how all these women are like, there's too many men have a million options. That's 80% men on dating apps. So that's why I laughed. I was like, oh, you think they have so many options?
It's like, really?
It's like close to that, yeah.
I didn't know that. I thought it was the opposite.
Oh, there's this huge article that just came out that was saying like men are just like tired of dating apps because if you're under like 6 feet, you're not getting representation. Yeah. If you're a minority, you never get seen. And it's predominantly men on the apps and less women. There's a lot of bots and a lot of fakes and a lot of things, but actual women of depth, there's not as many on these apps. Obviously, very dependent on where you live. So, major cities being that. But the reality is it's not that like, oh, there's not, there's more guys on there than there are girls. It's like in life, there are less guys that you want than there is to a girl. But that doesn't mean that all those women are in the dating apps.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's just dating app specific. But it's, men are getting kind of the shit end of the stick on there.
Wow. I literally thought it was the opposite.
I know. Me too. Until they did these studies and I was like, no shit.
Yeah. So I'm curious with your relationship. You said you were leaning more anxious and he was leaning more avoidant. Tell me how you worked on healing that.
When I first met him, I wanted him to text me more. And I remember sitting through it and being like, he said through the discomfort. And I'll never forget my sister's mother-in-law. I call her my mother-in-law, but it's my sister's. And I said to her, she goes, how are things with Ryan? And I said, good. We hung out probably 4 or 5 times. And I was like, he doesn't text me. And I remember her looking, going, here we go again. Sabrina's going to end it with a guy because she doesn't get her stupid good morning text. And I looked at her and I said, actually, bite your tongue, ma'am. Yeah. I was like, I'm not. And I had a conversation with him. We were texting very briefly one day. And I said, listen, I'd love more text in between our dates to feel a little more connected to you. Is that something you're open to? And he came off the bat, hey, this is not a sign of my disinterest. On the contrary, I'm really excited to see you and I'd love to see where this goes. I work in tech. The last thing I want to do is be on a mini phone on my computer, like mini screen in my hand when I'm with my dog and my friends. If you want to build a relationship in person, I'm so down for that. If not, I truly wish you all the best. Because he was done with it. He had countless women that he was like, you're ruining this courtship because you want me to do something I don't feel aligned with because I don't fucking know who you are. Yeah. So I said, okay, cool. And I watched his words and actions align. And when we'd have an issue, I never went more than a day or two without saying something. Even to this day, I tell him, like, he's looking at rings and he wants to propose and do all that. I am the first to say, nope, we have other things that we need to discuss that I need to make sure we are in alignment of, on the same page of, that are an involving conversation. And we've worked on it. I was very clear when I met him. After like a month, he asked me to be his girlfriend and I said no. And he said, what's your reasoning? And I said, well, hear me out. I said, you're not open enough. You're not vulnerable. You don't share it with me. And I'm very vulnerable, very open. I make you feel very seen, heard, understood, and comfortable. And I said, for me to continue with this, I need you to start to share things with me. And that's okay if you can't, but then this isn't going to work for me. And so he had a very clear rubric, started therapy, and started to work on that, working on his loops, working on his shit. That's what I mean by I'm in therapy. Both of us, I have anxiety and I annoy the shit out of him sometimes needing that reassurance or being on a loop of saying the same thing over and over. But then we both know how to come back together and he'll grab my hand and say, babe, I think you need to regulate right now. I can sense the anxiety. Yeah. And so we've understood each other. It took us months to get there. And that's the thing is like, we want to see progress. Yeah. But I saw progress. Every time we'd have a conversation, he would say, intention doesn't matter. Actions do. I need to show up for you. And he would. And so then I got fine. Trust was like, it's like a contract renegotiation. I give you a little, sign on the dotted line, come back. We renegotiate in a few months. Yeah. Because I think what I really learned was I had to replace everything at the end of it for now. This is really great for now. Because I don't know if it's going to last forever. And I don't want to attach to that and say, well, I have to be with him. It's okay. If that doesn't work out, it was a great run. And if it does, I'm here for it. But it was really learning that like, okay, what I want is on the other side of this discomfort and I have to learn how to challenge my thoughts because when I finally did, I have an amazing partner who did not text me every single day.
Yeah. Wow.
And we slept together on the first date. Like we did all the taboo stuff and we're very happy together. We have our issues. Yeah. But we work.
I love that example. Both of you knew what you wanted and you both had boundaries.
Yeah,
And that is very attractive when people both have boundaries and they're very clear and it's like no one's getting hyper attached. It's just like, hey, this is what I want. If it doesn't work for you, like wish you the best. I think that's so attractive.
Clear communication.
On both sides. And I also think when you're saying like, well, both of you have therapists and people to support you. I feel like a lot of people use each other as their therapist, which we just gotta get out of that. Like, I think that is like a big problem too. But can we talk about this courtship phase? Because I know there's a lot of opinions around, like pursuit and who should be pursuing, who should be paying, and how quickly should it go, and should it be this whirlwind thing, should it be really slow? Like, what are your thoughts on that phase about what's healthy?
Go slow. Like, you want an anecdote to love bombing and to attachment, it's like, slow it down. Going slow is not an excuse for bad behavior, though. That doesn't mean that, I just see them once every 3 weeks and we talk once every 2 weeks. It's like, no, that's bullshit. That's low effort. Going slow means I am not going to rush the stages of, I'm not going to expedite the stages of a relationship quicker than they need to be. I don't need to go from dating land to relationship land in a fucking week because I met this person and all of a sudden they're the one. So slow it down. Start to address at first date, just to see if you want to have a second. Second, just to see if you want to have a third. Get clear. First date with Ryan. I asked him to this day, I said, what made you want to date me? What made you like me? And he was like, the questions you asked. He was like, you showed up differently than any woman. He was like, your thought processes, the way you had, and he was like, you said the word, I want to co-create a life together. And he was like, that's all I've ever wanted. So unapologetically show up as yourself so that people can then also fucking receive that. Mm-hmm. Totally went off on a tangent. What were we saying?
I was asking about courtship.
Courtship, thank you. Okay,
going
sorry.
Slow. Yeah.
Welcome to
going slow.
So when we talk about going slow, that means seeing somebody once or twice a week, right? Like, you don't need to be having sleepovers after the first day. I had somebody who introduced her kid to this guy after like 3 dates. And I was like, what are you doing? Yeah. Stop it. Slow it down. Somebody love bombing you, set a boundary. Hey, I don't move at this pace. I'm very flattered, but I need to get to know you more before I reciprocate these types of feelings with you.
Can you define that for people? Because I think people don't know how to identify love bombing versus like they just like what is that?
Love bombing, the pinch doesn't match the ouch. The amount of attention, admiration, and affection you're getting doesn't match the amount of time you've known this person. So here's the reality. They didn't find, on the first date, they didn't see how amazing of a person you are, and they could just, no. That love, for them to overwhelm you with all of this attention benefits it's them. Yeah. So usually we see it either in narcissists because they're trying to get your boundaries so low that they then become the center of your world. Or we see that usually with people that are just insecure, that really want to attach quickly. I don't want to lose you. Please be mine. And then it feels suffocating, feels really overwhelming. But typically speaking, it's like if you're dating somebody and within the first month you hear, I love you, I want you to meet my friends and family. No, you're the one. I've never met anyone like you. I've been looking for you and searching for. No, none of this is anything that makes any fucking sense. What do you mean I'm the love of your life? You've known me for 4 hours. Do you know how this person is when they're triggered? How do they speak to waiters? What happens when they get into an argument with you? How do they handle adversity when they're out in the world? Have you gone to IKEA together? Like,
have you built furniture together?
Have you done anything? Yeah. Have you put yourself into pressured situations? So go slow. Go on a trip after a month or two. When you feel comfortable sleeping with this person, go away with them. Trust me, you'll see if you like them or not after you travel together. But it's like, I see it, 90 Day Fiancé is my trash. These people are in these fantasy relationships and everything. And then they get together. Like even the one, she was like, I've never seen this side of him. It's like, because you married him after knowing him for 4 months on the internet, and you met him when you met him that night and went to the chapel that night. Yeah. So then the next day she realized he's super controlling. And it's like, because you didn't know this person. I know. You got to give them time to show you who they are. But that also means taking care of you, not hey, whoa, I don't know this person. Anytime I get on the loop of like limerence, they're so amazing and whoa, what do I have to quantify that they're so amazing? The idea of them is fantastic, but I also want to see if the actual is too. Yeah, 100%. I'm curious, like exploring this so deeply, how has this affected your relationship? Because when you first met, you weren't doing this, right? I just started. Oh, you had just started? Yeah, I literally just started. Did that add a dynamic to it? Totally. Like it shifted everything. I think that's very fascinating. When I started, I had like maybe 2 months. I was in there for like 2 months. When I met him, like a couple of my videos had gone viral. So I was like, and I was clear with him. I said, hey, I am doing this thing. And he said, cool, keep me anonymous. So that's where Tech Guy came. And so I kept calling him Tech Guy because I was like, he works in tech. I don't know. And he evolved with the content, now he works for my company and now like we do all this stuff together. But when we first started dating, I was in the, if he wanted to, he would, and not as much, but I genuinely believed it. And then as we started to date, I was like, oh, avoidants aren't bad people. Yeah. Oh, people do operate differently. My lived experience isn't everybody else's. Yeah. I was able to grow as a person as well, change my ideology and start to see it with clients. You start to see other people having these experiences, but it shaped me into a different person because I could have some more compassion for other people and experiences that I didn't have myself. Totally. Can you break down that if you wanted to, you would, because I want to ask you about this because I was talking to my avoidant friends about this the other day. Like we're all just there's a lot of times I've wanted to and I haven't. Exactly. And there are times when men have told me they wanted to and they haven't, and I believe them. I think sometimes people say that and they don't really mean it, but like I do think that happens. Like we get scared because it's oversimplification. Yeah, it's a bumper sticker. Like we're in a time right now where everybody wants to identify with something. Slogans, bumper stickers, 140 characters or less. You think you can explain a human in that one sentence? We are such nuanced creatures, but yet you've chopped it up to, well, if he wanted to, he would. So what that does is it completely takes away accountability on your part. Really. But maybe he doesn't want to because look at how you're acting. So maybe it has nothing to do with want. It has to do with the fact that you're not compatible because you're being a tyrant to this person. Or maybe this person might want to do that, but they have serious limiting beliefs and they have a ton of trauma. And when they get triggered, they have a panic attack and you don't know that part of them. What I think it is, well, listen, when it's something simple of like, I went on a first date and he didn't call me on another, it's like, well, if they wanted to call you, they would, right? Like those are the times when it's very shallow, early dev, like, well, if he didn't, he didn't want to call you, right? We don't know. But even that, I'm like, it might not be want, right? It might actually be like something completely different. Maybe it is want, but maybe it's the 17,000 other things that happen to humans on a daily basis. Yeah. And I find that it's people that ingest that type of content, it's clickbait. It's just, babe, if like I saw one video and she's like, if he wants to change, he will. If he wants to go to evolve, he will. And it's like, I'm sorry, are you? Yeah. Because I said that to my anxious folk. I'm like, do you want to be a millionaire? Well, you must not want it bad enough then, huh? Because you're just not doing it. Yeah. When it's like, but do you have the tools? Do you have the bandwidth? Do you understand what it takes in order to be in a relationship? Because here's the reality. If you're a girl, if you're somebody walking around going, if he wanted to, he would, turn that inward. If I wanted to, I would. Because, babes, you're not doing any of the work as well because you're just putting it onto everyone else. Well, he must not want it. Instead of looking and saying, well, maybe I just don't understand it. Yeah. I think it's like you don't know what you don't know.
And I feel like that's the cool part about social media and all this information. Like you see things like I like literally didn't know that before. You know, I mean, I'm like, I literally didn't know when I was younger I was gonna need to learn relationship skills. Like no one tells you that. Like and I'm like, now, I mean, we should be taught that in school.
It's like
you
taxes.
know? Yeah, we need to be taught relationship skills. So I think a lot of times people, you know, we take it personally, but people just don't know. And then you learn that through dating. 100%. You
gotta have triggers.
Yeah.
Like those people, I'd rather stay single. It's like, man, you're just stunting your growth.
Yeah, 100%. What do you feel like are the biggest limiting beliefs that you see coming up for people in dating?
An amalgamation of I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, and no one's going to accept me for who I am.
Oof.
That's like the biggest one, is that even my own partner says that to me. Like he'll say like, I don't know that you're going to fall. I think when you find out who I really am, you're not going to love me. And all he meant that it was about like some of his shit that he went through as a kid. And I was like, are you kidding? I love you even more.
Yeah.
But I think that's the biggest limiting belief in the scarcity of like, there's no one out there. I'm never going to find anybody. This is so hard. And it's like, I'm sorry. I don't know who told you it wasn't. I don't know who told you that, like building a business.
Oh my God.
Who told you it wasn't going to be hard?
Exactly.
That's, I think, the issue that I have is like, well, somebody has been lying to you. If you wanted to, he would. And I think those are really the limiting beliefs I see, is just like, I can't do this, or I'm never going to get better, or this is just taking so long. And it's like, man, you just keep telling yourself that. You're going to keep fucking believing that.
Yeah, 100%. I have a lot of male entrepreneur clients who their biggest issue is their love life. And they feel like, well, I worked my ass off. I built this, multi-million-dollar company. Like I have this amazing life. Like, why isn't she just plopped in? And I'm like, it doesn't work like that. And I think a lot of people kind of feel like they're just like, I just become this person and the person just plops in. I'm like, you have to learn skills. Like you still have to pursue, like you got to be able to ask her questions and be curious about her. And I don't know, like, do you think that's all media? Like, why do people get in their heads these ideas?
I think it's also insecurities. Think about if you were like, we hear it all the time, like the chubby kid when you're a kid, and then you're like, I just want to be thin. If I just lost 20 pounds, and people think that result is what's going to lead to happiness. Yeah. So I busted look, I got the business, because every girl is going to want a business owner, right?
Yeah.
Well, but you still have to do the inner work for you to become the person that this person would want to date. Yeah. And people are putting everything on when this, then this. When I do this, then this. And the problem is I have clients, same thing, like that high achieving entrepreneur. And the reality is, what you do in your work does not translate in what you do in your home. Yeah. You cannot control other people. It. You can't. You can only have so much control. And in relationships, you have triggers. In business, you can control so much more. Mm-hmm. And so we have to remember, and like a lot of the times too, a lot of high achievers have imposter syndrome, have so much anxiety, and that's what fuels that high achieving of, I don't want to be a failure, I have to succeed. Double-edged sword. But unfortunately, do that in your relationships. I don't want to be a failure, I have to succeed. And you're like, oh, that's not how you connect with people. I
mean, it's not. And we'll treat relationships like a business, like a business decision, So I feel like people are going to be obsessed with this. And I want you to tell us about the courses you have a little bit more, because you have two, right?
I have two. Yeah. So I have the breakup course with Britt Frank, and that's a 3-week intensive. Like the reality is with the courses, it's not a lack of information, it's a lack of implementation. Yeah. And so the videos, we did like 30-minute videos, because we're like, we don't need to over explain things to you. Take the worksheet, go fucking do it. Go implement these tools. That's at least so that you can kick that addiction loop. And so we really help people those 3 weeks of, it's time to be done with this. So that's the one course. And then I have the foundation course, which is like my baby. Yeah. And that's the one I did by myself. And it's an 8-week like self-guided type thing. And it's got, meditations along the way to help with inner child. We go over dating patterns, inner child, limiting beliefs. Mm-hmm. What is it that you want? Getting very clear and granular on that. And that way you can come back for life, and you could do the meditations when you need them. And I just really wanted to be able to help for the people that are like in that struggle. And then the next course coming out is my friend Masha, and it's a nervous system course for the first 0 to 3 months of dating. Wow. So we identified the pain points of like, they don't text you, they don't do this. And we give a ton of tools and ways to be able to work through that so that you can then get to the 3 to 6 month mark.
I love that. All the things we were supposed to be taught in school.
Yeah, exactly.
That we weren't. What are you super interested in right now in this world? Like, what are you geeking out on? What topic?
Neuroscience.
Yeah.
I thought my friend Nicole is a neuroscientist, and it's just fascinating. Every time she tells me, I'm like, wait, what? How do you say that? I find it incredible that our brain and our nervous system work in the ways that it does. And for me, that's why I'm evolving my conversations. It's not just like, oh, who should pay for the first date? It's like, oh my God, if that's your biggest fucking issue, like, Jesus, like, I'm sorry, but like, we have got to evolve. We have got to get past this rudimentary, elementary type of behavior. And it's like, listen, if him not paying you for the first date bothers you, then stop dating people. But let me tell you, nothing's for free in life. Yeah. And maybe that, right, it's a conversation. If money is that important, fine, then reassess what it is that's important to you. But I think for me, it's about really understanding, like, can we get a little bit higher brow on like, well, what's making us tick that way and how is this all operating?
Yeah. Ugh. Has that connected anything for you?
Oh, yeah.
Like what?
Oh my God.
Give me an example.
When the name changed and I had a mental breakdown.
Yeah.
And I totally lost my shit. And then I realized that after I was doing some inner child meditation that I completely shut down and went back to being a 6-year-old. And that 6-year-old was when I felt really helpless around my dad because we couldn't control that he was hitting us. And it brought me back to that same feeling in memory. And then when I was able to go back and hold that little me and reaffirm to her and rework that, I have not had that same emotional reaction anymore. So I have seen it personally. I've done 15, 20 ketamine treatments at this point. Like, I take this shit so seriously, and I have seen that you actually do this work, you genuinely can make changes. Now, that doesn't mean that all of a sudden it's all gone, but that means I know how to live with it.
I mean, those are the tools, right? So, well, that's amazing. I'm excited to see what you keep diving into and what you share. I mean, I love how you combine the neuroscience and like I said, like the body piece, I think is so important, and people don't realize how much of their dysregulation is running their decisions, you know? So it's like all just coming back to clarity within yourself and what that really means, I think.
Get to come home back to yourself.
Yeah, 100%. Well, this has been incredible. Thank you so much for being here. I cannot wait for everybody to listen to this. Like, this is going to be game changing. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. And thank you guys for listening this long, and stoked, and hopefully it helps.